Go ahead. Go ahead.
You indicated that going into Iraq before the UN Inspector Generals had completed their job was a fatal flaw. Is that an acknowledgement that voting for the war was a mistake?
Well, no, it would be if she'd voted for the war, but why don't you tell everybody what that resolution was? What did that resolution she voted for say? I've been doing this for a year now, and I can't find anybody who can tell me what it said. And by the way, who wrote it? Who co-sponsored the resolution that is the so-called Iraq War Resolution? Anybody know? What did it say and who wrote it? Anybody know? Go ahead. What did it say? It did say that, and you can criticize her and anybody who voted for it for that. And she has said that she would not have voted for it if she'd known then what she knows now. But it did not authorize, there was a war resolution sent to the Congress. And it said the president can go to war, not just in Iraq, anywhere in the Middle East for any reason. And the Senate rejected it. They wrote a resolution that authorized the president to go to war in Iraq if the diplomatic efforts failed, that is, if the inspections failed. The then National Security Advisor, now Secretary of State, Condi Rice, gave personal assurances to the members of the Senate that there would not be an attack unless the inspections failed. So you wound up with two groups of people voting for that. You had the people like Senator McCain and Senator Lieberman who wanted to go to war in Iraq. That is, they thought it was good that 9/11 gave us a pretext to go to war in Iraq. Then you had another group of senators who just wanted to know what happened after Saddam kicked the inspectors out. You remember, let me go back. Saddam Hussein kicked the inspectors out in '98. And then the United Kingdom and we, when I was president, bombed the places we thought he had biological and chemical materials. I never thought he had a nuclear program. I never thought he had any active bombs. But the UN said, not us, the UN said there were unaccounted for stocks of chemical and biological materials. Now, a distinguished journalist, Thomas Ricks, whom I think is the Pentagon correspondent for the Washington Post, wrote a book on this called Fiasco, in which he said that Iraqis who were captured said we did destroy all that stuff when we bombed, but we didn't know it. And Saddam didn't want anybody to know it because he thought the Iranians would think he was weak if he didn't have this stuff, which is why I say the inspection should have been allowed to finish. When Hillary voted for that, she believed that Saddam would only cooperate if there was the threat of force hanging over his head, and a lot of other Democrats did too. They all now say that if they'd known they were going to go to war anyway, they wouldn't have done it. The Democrats who voted against it either didn't trust the president and the secretary to keep his word, and he gave a speech in which he said the inspections were the last chance to avoid war, or they didn't think that military action was warranted in any case. I just say she has said repeatedly she would not have voted for it, but I think the policy of coerced inspections is not one we want to give up for the future, because some future president might level with you and actually be telling you the truth, that we need some consequence. The reason I ask you is it's important. Senator Biden and Senator Chuck Hagel, who is generally recognized to be the only Republican in the Senate who always opposed the war. Hagel was always against it. He was a co-author of that resolution, and which I presume is why Senator Obama said in 2004 he didn't know whether he would have voted for it or against it, which is not, but the narrative of this campaign has been very different. And so she said she wouldn't have voted for it, but I think it's important that we not let the facts be obscured here. That resolution said that force was authorized if the diplomatic efforts then underway, either the inspections failed. The president said the inspections were the last chance to avoid war, and the National Security Advisor, Condi Rice, personally assured many members of the Senate that they would be allowed to proceed. Hagel gave an interview on this in GQ magazine, actually, in which he basically said that they had already asserted they had the authority to go to war, and from his point of view, he regretted that he had presented the resolution because he felt like he'd been misled, but they probably went to war in spite of it, not because of it, since the inspections were never allowed to be finished. And I know Hans Blix, the chief weapons inspector for the UN, I know he feels that way. He feels that he was personally abused and misled, that he thought he would be able to finish that job. And you know, I personally think it diverted our attention from Afghanistan, the hunt for the al-Qaeda leaders, alienated a lot of the world. Now we are where we are now, and I think most of our Democratic senators, and I think our candidates have more or less voted the same way on Iraq since they've been voting on this, because everybody wants it to work as well as it can be. But it's time for us to get out of there. That's the most important thing. We cannot make any meaningful contribution, in my opinion, by continuing to be involved in the military conflict. And that's Hillary's position, is that if there is no operable plan, which she's been asking for months, to withdraw our troops, she will, on her first day in office, instruct the Pentagon to present one that enables us to begin withdrawing troops within 60 days after that and get out of the